Okay, we're live.
All right. Good evening. My name is Chantel Wright, and I serve as chair of the DC Public Charter School Board. Welcome to this month's public board meeting. I would like to welcome my fellow board members, Treasurer Carissa Stanley Beatty, Secretary Shakora Adamanfania, and Leah Crucy. Vice Chair Jim Salmon can't be with us this evening, but he will be voting by proxy. Last week, I had the opportunity to testify before the DC Council about our review and renewal process. I opened my testimony with a simple truth. The relationship between the DC PCSB board and each school's board is built on a commitment, a compact, a charter. It's a promise of greater autonomy in exchange for clear expectations of academic, financial, and operational success. As I shared last week and will reiterate today, the DC PCSB board takes that promise seriously. We evaluate each school's performance against its commitments and hold schools accountable, not to punish, but to ensure they deliver on the promise they made to their students and families. If anyone believes our role is to close schools unnecessarily, let me be clear. Nothing could be further from the truth. My fellow board members and I are parents, DC residents, and civic leaders with years of experience in education. We are deeply invested in the success of every school, and our goal is to celebrate, support, and strengthen them, while ensuring every student has access to the quality education they were promised and that they deserve. Later in the week, I joined colleagues at the National Association of Charter School Authorizers Leadership Conference for a session titled, Accountability is Not the Enemy. That title was intentional. Accountability, especially right now, is not just about compliance or data. It's about trust, leadership, and the human impact of the decisions we make. Dr. Walker Davis and I co-presented and testified at both events. And those conversations reminded us that behind every policy and every measure is a student and a family who are counting on us. That brings me to this month's theme, safe, seen, and supported, centering students and planning for the future. This theme comes to life when we think about Count Day, which occurs every October. On the surface, it's a data collection point, a set of numbers on a page. But in truth, it tells a story of belonging and trust. Every student counted represents a family that chose a public charter school because they believed their child would be safe, known, and cared for. Enrollment is not just about filling seats, it's about access and connection. It's about ensuring every student, no matter their background or their need, feels welcomed, supported, and positioned to succeed. When students feel safe, when they feel seen, when they feel supported, students thrive and schools thrive. And right now, that sense of safety and belonging feels especially urgent. In recent weeks, we've seen heightened federal enforcement and increased ICE activity across the city. For some of our families, that has meant renewed fear and uncertainty. Things like simply getting to and from school without harm. In response, schools and communities have doubled down on care, ensuring that every child has a trusted adult looking out for them, and that every family knows schools remain a place of refuge and protection. This is what it means to truly center students, not just to meet their academic needs, but recognizing and honoring their humanity. As a board, our responsibility is oversight and policy approval, but our role is so much more. It is also to ensure that every student in our city is not only learning and learning at high levels, but belonging and that every school is equipped and accountable for creating those conditions. October Count Day and this month's theme remind us that our mission isn't only about performance, it's about people. Every decision we make, every school we review, every policy we consider should answer a few questions. Are students safe, seen, and supported today? Are students learning at high levels? And are we setting schools up to thrive tomorrow? That's the lens we'll continue to bring to this work, firm in our accountability and deeply rooted in empathy and trust. Thank you for your continued commitment to our students and to the communities we serve. I'll now turn it over to Executive Director Dr. Walker Davis for her remarks.
Good evening, members of the board, school leaders, school trustee members, and members of the public tuning in this evening. Building on what Chair Wright just shared, I want to take a closer look at what it truly means for our students to be safe, seen, and supported. Her reflections remind us that safety and belonging are not abstract ideas. They are daily realities that determine whether a student feels ready to learn. This month, we take stock of our city's school enrollment. This year, 47,727 students are enrolled in DC's public charter schools, a 0.4% increase from last year. We have seen an increase in enrollment for the last 5 years. These are early numbers, but they matter. They tell us where students are learning and how our sector is growing. Yet numbers alone don't tell the whole story. They can't capture whether a student feels valued, whether they have adults who believe in them, or whether they feel a true sense of belonging at school. One of the best parts of this work is visiting schools and meeting students. It's the highlight of my days. On a recent visit, I met a student I'll call Amir. On paper, Amir is thriving academically, but what really stood out was the web of care surrounding him. His school provides counseling to check in on his emotional well-being, a nurse who monitors his health needs, coaches who support him during the day, after-school tutoring to keep him on track, and a social worker who connects his family with community resources. He has mentors who encourage him, nutritious meals that keep him energized, and sports that help him build teamwork, confidence, and joy. Every part of Amir's school experience is designed to help him feel safe, seen, and supported, so he can show up ready to learn. Stories like Amir's remind us that learning begins with belonging. Our students don't just need instruction, they need connection. They need to know that the adults around them care deeply about their well-being, inside and outside the classroom. And I'm proud to say that so many of our school leaders and teachers create these environments for students every day. I was reminded again this morning while talking with Washington Leadership Academy Public Charter School student leaders. That commitment to care also shows up in how our schools respond to the world around them. As Chair Wright mentioned, recent increases in federal enforcement and immigration activity have created real fear for some of our families. I want to acknowledge the incredible efforts of our schools and community partners who have worked tirelessly and fearlessly to ensure students can get to and from school safely, extending the warm and welcoming faces well beyond the school doors. I also want to thank everyone for recognizing and supporting the work of our communities and school staff. I know it's not sustainable for them to carry this responsibility day after day, but their dedication is extraordinary. I would simply ask that we continue to stand with our school communities and advocate for their safety. Our office regularly converses with MPD, and we have requested that they avoid warrantless checks near schools during pickup and drop-off hours and take measures to reduce potential harm. This work of keeping students safe and supported is also at the heart of how we think about accountability. That's why I'm proud that tonight we are voting on 2 schools adopting Aspire, our revised accountability system, as their charter goals, the first of what we hope will be many more. Aspire represents our shared vision of schools that not only meet high standards, but do so in ways that honors each student's full experience, their growth, their challenges, and their potential. and schools have until April 1, 2026 to adopt. The principles behind Aspire also guided my recent testimony before Chairman Mendelson and the DC's Council's Committee of the Whole. Joined by Chair Wright, I shared how our review and renewal processes are designed to uphold both accountability and support. As this board knows, under the School Reform Act, schools must be renewed every 15 years and reviewed at least every 5. Renewals function as pass-fail determinations. Schools must comply with the law and meet their charter goals. Reviews, on the other hand, provide opportunities for reflection and course correction when needed. And when issues arise outside of those cycles, such as financial mismanagement or compliance concerns, we at the PCSB act quickly. At the council hearing, I also shared how Aspire aligns with this approach, allowing schools to measure what matters most: growth, equity, and opportunity. The updates we've implemented in our review and renewal cycle, earlier engagement with school leaders, extended timelines, and improved communication reflect our continued commitment to transparency and fairness. Finally, I thank the council for passing the Board of Trustees Training Amendment Act, which strengthened governance across our sector. Strong governance leads to stronger schools and stronger outcomes for students. As we move forward, I remain grounded in what we see in schools like Amir's. When students are safe, seen, and supported, they thrive. And when schools feel trusted, guided, and accountable, our entire sector grows stronger. Thank you for your continued partnership in making that vision real for every child. We will have a presentation on this year's review and renewal cycle at an upcoming board meeting. Thank you, Chair Wright.
Thank you, Dr. Walker Davis. At the beginning of every board meeting, the DC Public Charter School Board hears public testimony related to items on the agenda and listens to testimony for topics not related to any agenda items. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak. If you need to make a few additional points, please email your testimony for us to read to public.comments@dcpcsb.org. Public officials who sign up to testify will be allowed to speak for up to 5 minutes. The hand-raising feature has been disabled. As a reminder, all written public comment is available to the public on our website. If you would like to register to provide live testimony or submit a written comment to the board, you can find all testimony registration and submission information on our website under the Public Comment tab at dcpcsb.org. You can also submit your comments to public.comment@dcpcsb.org or call our public comment line to leave a voicemail testimony at 202-328-2660 and select option 2. As we move through each speaker, Jonah, our Zoom host for the evening, will promote each speaker from the attendee pool and unmute individuals speaking. Tonight, we have 2 individuals who signed up to speak this evening. I'd like to invite to testify before the board, Valerie Jablow. Jonah, is Ms. Jablow with us?
She is. She has been promoted to panelist. I'm just
Okay.
going to ask her to unmute now. I'm sorry, maybe I got the wrong person here. Hold on. Give me 1 second.
And Ms. Danielle Schmutz, if you could also just be ready because you're up next.
I don't see them actually.
Oh, I actually don't see either one of them either.
Yeah, I invited up a different Valerie. I'm sure I was the wrong one. And I think Valerie Sanders. That's not, you can probably.
Yeah, that's that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I see that you promoted me, but that's a different person.
Yeah, we apologize about that. Okay. If they come, you can let me know, Jonah, but given that, then I don't see either of our public comment speakers here this evening. So with that, then I will move on to the next portion of our
Give
public
me
hearing.
1 second. I'm having a note here. Hold on. Valerie might be a call-in person. Let me just double check. We have 2 phone numbers in tonight.
Okay.
Yes, I am going to promote. I think we have Valerie. Are you on the phone now?
Ms. Jablow, if that is you, you have to unmute.
Yes. Yes. Can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. I am Valerie Jablow, a DC resident, commenting on the Friendship application before you. In April, Friendship was awarded a replication and expansion grant from the U.S. Department of Education. The notice said that the money would be used to create a new high school called Friendship Collegiate Academy West that would be located at 6200 Kansas Avenue Northeast. The duration of the grant was 5 years with $1.5 billion for the first year for a total of $2.6 million. The new high school was to have 400 seats and decrease the Friendship Collegiate Academy waitlist. The September application before you, however, proposes a different plan for that Kansas Avenue property as a location to support Friendship's existing online programming from kindergarten through grade 12. Importantly, the application mentions nothing about this grant nor the creation of a new high school, even while the minutes of the May 15 Friendship Board meeting included in support of this application mention a vote for a, quote, Collegiate West facility, unquote, and amending charter goals for it. Weeks ago, after I was unable to find any information about this federal grant in minutes of the Friendship Board since fall 2024, I emailed all of you about it and got no answer. Friendship's John Glover recently mentioned that Friendship has not spent this federal grant money and is considering its uses. It thus remains unclear what amount Friendship has received and will get out of this federal grant money, what it has been and will be used for, and whether Friendship will create a new high school in the next 5 years. Because this grant money is clearly connected to the Kansas Avenue property that is part of Friendship's application before you now and inevitably affects Friendship's funding, I ask that before you vote on this application, you learn and let DC taxpayers know where this federal money is, what Friendship's plan is for it, and what the grant terms are. That is because DC taxpayers are entitled to know about the plans for future high schools that we will be obliged to pay for. As it is, the terms of this grant may be such that your vote to approve this proposal is effectively approval of a new high school at the same location years hence. I look forward to your responding to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jablow, for your testimony. I appreciate the public comment and have also seen your written questions, and we will be discussing that this evening in the public hearing. So thank you. Do we have, did Danielle come in? I don't see Danielle. Do you see her, Jonah?
No. Yeah, I don't see her, and we don't have a number for her. So I think we'll just, if she shows up, I'll let you know.
Okay. All right. So with that, then that does conclude our public comment portion of our agenda. Next on our agenda, we have several charter amendment requests. I yield the floor to Hannah Cosina, Director, Sector Planning and Compliance, to introduce the first request from Friendship Public Charter School. While Hannah's coming up, I'd also like to invite representatives from the school to provide remarks regarding this amendment request. Donald Hintz, Pat Brantley, John Glover, Ken Cherry, James Waller, Vioka Scott Marcus, Catherine Sunfun, and Monique Miller. If you are in the panelists, or attendees list, please raise your hand for easy promotion. And Hannah, while they are coming, I will turn it over to you.
Good evening. My name is Hannah Cousineau, and I am a director in the School Performance Department. Tonight, the board will hear from Friendship Public Charter Schools regarding its facilities amendment request. The proposed changes pertain to 4 properties Friendship PCS already owns and operates. First, the address for the Friendship PCS Southeast facility should be updated to 2715 Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue Southeast per city regulation. Second, DCPCSB should restore the address 620 Milwaukee Place Southeast in the school's charter agreement. This is the former site of the Friendship PCS Technology Preparatory Middle School. This address would serve as the auxiliary site for Friendship PCS Southeast Elementary, Southeast Middle, and Technology Preparatory High School. Next, the facility addresses for Friendship PCS Ideal Elementary and Middle are listed currently as 6130 North Capitol Street Northwest and 6200 Kansas Avenue Northeast. The school requests to consolidate these campuses at the newly expanded facility at 6130 North Capitol Street Northwest. Finally, the facility at 6200 Kansas Avenue Northeast would be the auxiliary site for Friendship PCS Online Academy, Friendship PCS Online Collegiate Academy Online, and all other Friendship campuses. The school does not seek an increased enrollment ceiling or new campus at this time. Representatives from the school are here to answer your questions.
Thank you, Hannah. Okay, I think I see most of the Friendship folks here. I don't see, oh, there she is. Good evening, Ms. Brantley, how are you?
Good evening. I'm fine.
Good. If you want to go ahead and introduce who's here with you, and then if there's any comments you have about the request.
Certainly, we have Vioka Scott Marcus, our Chief Academic Officer, Monique Miller, who's our board staff, Ken Cherry, our Chief of Staff, Catherine Sumfun, who is our Chief Financial Officer, John Govler, who is our Chief of External Affairs, and I believe you should also have Donald Hentz, whom I don't see.
So Pat, Donald is joined under my name.
Ah, okay. And so you also have Donald Hentz, Friendship's founder, who will open with remarks.
Okay, and Jonah, can you change Mr. Hentz? Good
All
evening, Mr. Hentz. How are you?
Hello. How are you, Chantel? Good to
I'm
see
good. Good to see you too.
you. Good evening, members of the school board, charter school board, and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Donald Hentz, founder and board chair of Friendship Public Charter School. Almost 30 years ago, Friendship took a leap of faith and opened 2 campuses in former DCPS buildings that no one wanted. We turned them into beacons of learning and hope for families. From the very beginning, our vision was simple but powerful: to create world-class learning experiences in welcoming places that help children reach their fullest potential. That same spirit drives us today. The amendment before you includes some routine updates to our existing campuses, including address changes, so our charter agreement reflects our actual location addresses and an alternative location for the in-person work of our online scholars, who we now, for the first time, have an opportunity to educate in thoughtfully designed educational spaces at our existing Kansas Avenue facility. While our online programs have provided flexibility for many families, we know that community and connection are at the heart of learning. The online annex will give students a place to come together, to collaborate, to receive support, and to feel that strong sense of belonging that defines friendship. Furthermore, we are required to test our online students in person and must have adequate space to do so. We are proud of our nearly 30-year history, and we remain deeply committed to innovation, equity, and community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hentz. Anything else before we jump in?
We can jump in.
Okay. All right. So I'm actually going to kick us off. So obviously you just heard the public comment from Ms. Jablow, and we've received a lot of written commentary inquiring about the grant that that Friendship received and its use, and whether or not this is really just a precursor to trying to expand high school. So I want to give you an opportunity to share what this grant is, if you have plans to use it, and give you an opportunity to respond to the public comment that has come in.
Thank you. So first, the charter school program grant and this request are not related. This request is really about the first two parts, which are address changes for Southeast and address changes for Ideal, are fairly routine. The third part, which is about where we can bring together our online students, provide them with testing and with tutoring, is the facility that I think is of question. And so the charter schools program grant has typically three purposes, which you may know, so please stop me if I'm being too detailed. And that is to replicate, to refine programs, and to disseminate information. That replication could mean new school or it could mean more seats. In this particular case, it is our intention to find a way to have Friendships middle school students who do not have an accessible Friendship high school have more access. That is what our charter schools program grant is. This year and the beginning of next year are really a planning grant. To date, we have received zero funding from the charter schools program. We expect that once we have our plans and the charter board, as I understand it, is putting out a new expansion or ECI policy, that if we're eligible, we will come back before you with those plans and ask for a high school program that can serve these students. But I just want to make this point about the charter schools program. It's not about new students. It's about serving Friendships current eighth graders that do not have as much accessibility to our two current high school programs.
What does that mean? That your
I mean,
eighth
it's the
graders having
distance.
access?
It's the distance. And so there are multiple ways that we could meet our goals. A high school location that is closer to those three schools, and it's three particular schools, Woodridge, Armstrong, and Ideal, or it could be transportation. So that's why this planning year is critically important for us. And that's what's being funded when and if we receive funds, because of the current operations of the Department of Ed, the timing and some of the routine funding that people would expect is not moving as quickly as what it may have been in the past.
Okay, so just a point of clarification. So you all have not received, despite what we just heard, you all have not received any of, you've been granted it or awarded it, right? But you have not received or spent any of those funds.
That's correct. We have not received any grant dollars under that award. We have the award, but no grant dollars.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about, Mr. Hintz spoke about it in his opening statement, and I've read it, but can you tell us a little bit about how you currently use the 6200 Kansas Avenue and what the plan is for using it moving forward?
Yes. So there are three buildings. There is an elementary school, an elementary and middle on one side of the street that was the former Ideal school that had just a one not quite ideal building, and then next to it was a warehouse that was on the same ground lot, and then across the street was a facility that we were using almost a swing space for Friendship Ideal students as we built out what was the warehouse space to give them more ideal space. In terms of running the program, having staff cross the street, having students cross the street was not ideal when we could fit all of them into the one side of the street where we built out the warehouse space for classrooms. So how has Ideal been used? It's been used as additional classrooms for Friendship Ideal. That's what the 6200 space was used for. Can I talk about how the online program?
Yeah. So that's how it's been used today. And now what you're proposing, yes, talk to me.
Okay. So our current Friendship Online students for K-8 have 8 classrooms in what was a repurposed police substation. And those 8 classrooms are not in great shape. They are not sort of big enough for when we have to do testing, so it makes the testing environment not ideal. We also have students that come in every week or every other for tutoring, for science lessons, for other things. So even though they are online students, we maintain a physical place for them to come in for things that just are difficult to do outside. So we would have the students that are closer have that classroom space at the 6200 for tutoring, for testing, for special ed services that we can't deliver or are not best delivered virtually.
Okay. Okay. And so to give you an opportunity to respond to comments that are coming in, did your grant application itself say that you would be using 6200 Kansas to expand into a high school? The grant to the CSP grant.
What our application and our budget and the revised budget talks about a location that would be closer to Ward 4 campuses. And so because we knew we were repurposing this building for online, in our revision, which again, we haven't received any funds for, we are talking about an accessible location, but not 6200. If that does turn out after our year of planning to be the location, as you know, we'd have to come back to get approval for a campus opening because a campus is defined as both a grade span and a location. So we'd have to come to you for that.
Okay. Okay. And then Hannah, quick question for you, and then I'm going to turn it over to the rest of the board. Have we pulled and reviewed the grant application ourselves for the purposes of sector planning? Like, have we looked at that knowing that that is anticipated or could be anticipated?
Yes, we were familiar back in back in 2024 when Friendship first applied. We were aware of that via our contacts at OSSI and the Department of Ed. And then we were aware that they were awarded the grant. And that started conversations about the use of their facilities. And that eventually leads us to today when you have this request before you to repurpose some existing Friendship facilities.
Okay. Okay. So I do just want to note for the record that Friendship has been awarded, but has not received and or spent federal funds and have not, and there is clear understanding that whatever growth plans and enrollment plans would need to come before the board. And we are aware of that as staff, and obviously we know that as a board. So I do just want to make sure that the record reflects that. Okay. Treasurer Stanley, Pat, were you about to say something?
Yes, I was going to say that I think what's more important is charter school program grants get awarded, but the authorizer approval is not often before the grant itself. And so we were quite aware of the need to come back to you for approval of wherever we might locate a new school, particularly if it needed additional seats. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew that we were aware of that.
Yep. Okay. And then I'm sorry, Chris, I know I came to, but one other clarification. When you did the engagement with the community, this was engagement around the use, the repurposed use for online of your existing schools and existing students.
Yes, we did, and John can speak to engagement if, or we can wait to the next question. And so we talked to the community about wanting to repurpose for existing students. We also talked about sort of our future plans for eventually wanting to have another high school that could serve existing Friendship students, but ultimately centered on this repurpose for right now for what we need for this year and going forward.
Okay. John, do you want to talk about that a little bit in terms of how you've engaged and in terms of particularly just because there were questions from those residents over there about Friendship's intended plans, how you have reached out to them, engaged them and shared?
Absolutely. Happy to do that. And just to echo what Pat said, I think as part of the application materials, one of the emails that was submitted, excuse me, references the primary purpose of the online annex and a potential second purpose of high school serving collegiate students. And I think this reflects a narrowing of that initial possibility. We have done outreach through the ANC. We participated in multiple ANC meetings We participated in a single member district meeting with the ANC. We did outreach to all of the Ward 4 DCPS and public charter schools. We reached out to faith leaders and community leaders in the area. I called Kathy Riley of the Ward Education Council in Ward 4. We did internal outreach via survey, via conversations with families, via conversations with leaders. We heard loud and clear from previous applications before this board the critical nature of doing more than cursory outreach and just sending an email to the ANC. And we really tried to lean into that in the way that we heard you wanted organizations to communicate with the community.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, Treasurer Stanley Beatty. I'm going on mute.
Thank you, Chair Wright. Friendship team, Ms. Brantley, I just have a few questions. The first one, and I'm pulling from the actual proposal that staff prepared for us, just so you know where my thoughts are coming from. I agree with you. Most of this seems fairly routine, but I just want to make sure I understand it. So I'll start with 645 Milwaukee Place. So in terms of that address change, I know it sounds like you're doing it to comply with DC Reg, but what sort of prompted the change? Was there a frontage change with the building?
So yes, so 645 Milwaukee Place runs perpendicular to Martin Luther King Boulevard. And so we always had the property in front of 645 Milwaukee Place. It is now connected by a bridge. And so for emergency services, for others, that is the first address, and it fronts on Martin Luther King.
That makes sense to me. Okay. My next question is about the restoration of 620 to your charter agreement. So the way that I read this, when we say restore, that indicates to me that it was a part of the charter agreement in the past. So when was it removed from the charter agreement, and why?
So ultimately, Friendship has on that, let's call it corridor, what was 645, which will now become 27, which was started as an elementary school only. 620 was the middle school, and then there's a high school called Tech Prep on the same quarter. So they're 3 parts of the same area. Middle grades have been at 620, and Southeast Elementary expanded to be Southeast Elementary and Middle. When that changed in the charter, that address came out, but it was always an address that we controlled. In our conversations with your staff, they thought it was important that all of the addresses that we're using there be reflected in the charter.
So I understand 620 has always been a building that you've owned and controlled.
Yes.
I get that part. I'm specifically trying to understand why it came out of the charter, and perhaps it's a question for staff. I think Hannah, when did 620 come out of the charter?
Yes, I can share that detail. There was a charter amendment request in January 2019 that the board approved. As part of that amendment, Friendship established Friendship PCS Southeast Middle School, which Pat just shared about. And that's down the street from that existing Tech Prep Middle, which was located at 620 Milwaukee Place. Relatedly, the LEA chose to wind down Tech Prep Middle at the conclusion of school year 2019-20.
Okay, so then 620 Milwaukee came out of the charter agreement at Friendship's request? I'm trying to figure out why it came out of the charter. I understand what you're saying, that they had this, essentially this amendment request. I'm specifically asking a question about why 620 came out of the charter agreement.
So I think I can answer that, but Hannah, please correct me if I'm wrong. So the way that campuses and addresses are listed in a charter is that it's each campus and then there's a row that has the address. And so when Tech Prep Middle came out, because Southeast became Southeast Elementary and Middle, that row came out along with the address. But the address was not added back to the middle school. And so as we were looking through the addresses and realized it wasn't there, we thought it was important to make sure it was added back.
Okay. 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 So it sounds like perhaps it was administrative. You're smiling, Hannah. It sounds like perhaps it was administrative that it was taken out. Let me be clear about what I'm getting at. And I raised this with staff before. There's verbiage in the actual proposal that says that the charter agreement erroneously does not include the Friendship PCS facility. I want to understand, was it erroneous or is this just administrative? Because I don't want to call something erroneous if it wasn't. So I'm trying to wrap my head around that.
I can jump in here.
Okay.
Treasurer Stanley Beatty, I think administrative is probably a better use of the word than erroneous. And as as Ms. Brantley shared, it was because we removed the school. We also removed the associated address, but the facility does belong to Friendship, and probably the more correct change would have been to assign that address to the middle school, the Southeast Middle School. So we will correct that now as the board. If the board chooses to approve this amendment, we will correct it administratively in going forward to align with the proposal in front of you.
I would ask that, Dr. Walker Davis, for the purposes of just the record and prior to the vote. If it wasn't erroneous, we should say that. If it's purely administrative, I follow that, but we should be accurate about what actually happened. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
And then my only other question, Ms. Brantley, you talked a little bit about the financial implications. Well, I think because you own the buildings and you've operated them, it seems as though there's little financial implication. That's my assumption. And clearly, I know from a financial strength perspective, you all are on strong footing. But I want to ask if any of the facility changes that you're asking for today, do they have any implications on your finances?
They do not, because as you noted, we already own and control the buildings. We already pay mortgages on them and maintain them completely in terms of operations that you would expect. They do not. And I don't know if this is added comfort, but if you look at the budget we submitted, you will note there is no difference between what was I think it's called the base budget or the base case, and our sort of case without bringing on or adding these facilities, or at least naming them in the charter agreement.
Okay, very good. That's the extent of my questions, Chair Wright.
Thank you. Board Member Crucy.
Good evening, Friendship team. It's nice to see everyone. It's nice to see you, Mr. Hens. Thank you for the presentation this evening. I had two follow-up questions. It's possible they were touched on already, so please forgive me if I missed it. The first is about the CSP, which I understand is not part of the proposal this evening. This is a clarifying question. Just want to confirm that the application or the award did not assume an authorizing pathway for a possible replication, but that it gives the applicant LEA the flexibility because they would not know. It would be somehow contingent on an authorizer approving a pathway.
Having known the CSP program and knowing how other CSP awards have gone, where somebody might get an award for 5 new schools or 10 new schools, those don't often come with the authorizer pathway involved. It would likely mean that when we get to a year when we need the authorized pathway, if we don't get it, then the grant would not get fully paid out, right? I think you have seen that in CSP programs, but it does not assume an authorized pathway. For DC, though, we know that to establish a new campus, you have to have authorization.
Right. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. And the second question is just understanding that while the you have been awarded it. The award has not come with fund distribution yet.
Correct.
Is there risk to that, to any of these plans or other plans?
There aren't risks to the plans. If you're asking if there are risks to the funds, I guess I would give the example of the grant we were awarded with American for teacher prep. And then those grants were canceled by the department or by the administration. And so some things seem to be in flux. So there aren't the risks to the plans aren't the grants unless there's some change in the administration's
Understand.
stance on those grants. I think the risks to the plans are whether or not we are eligible for authorization when we get to that point of submitting a plan to you.
Okay, thank you. And again, this is all unrelated to your requests brought before us this evening. So these buildings and these address changes have nothing to do with that.
That is correct. We did discuss with your staff what was necessary in terms of bringing it. I mean, as you are likely aware, there are multiple charters that have students going to auxiliary space. There was the sense that because of emergency planning and et cetera, we should go ahead and bring it forward, which we did. I am not aware, though, that that is a regularly recurring thing that the charter board does have with charters that are using auxiliary space. It made sense to us, though, to do it all together since we had the other administrative changes. I don't know if Hannah, you want to speak to that, but that was just a question that we had.
Nothing to add to that.
My final question is related to the online programming related to the online campus. Should this get approved, would there be any changes in programming activity or plans?
There would
should you have
be
access to the space?
Yes, we have high impact tutoring that we are providing across all Friendship campuses. And while you can do tutoring virtually, it works better in very small groups that are in person. So that would be significant. It is very difficult to test all of our students on high stakes testing in just the 8 small classroom spaces that we currently have. Particularly if we need accommodations. And so the testing schedule would be certainly a lot better for students. We have online students each have a learning coach or a learning facilitator. It's typically a parent. We train those parents in person and provide them with support that they need through what we call monthly flock meetings. This would provide just an adequate space for them to come into, which we don't currently have.
Thank you.
Secretary Adamafania.
Thank you, Chair Wright. Good evening, Friendship team. I just have a couple of logistical questions regarding the proposal before us tonight. Question 1, can you talk a little bit about the additions to Southeast and the ideal facilities, and particularly the impact on your school community, if any at all?
So the Friendship Ideal was a very small, not necessarily well-structured facility. But it did have a dilapidated warehouse building connected to it. And so we were able to build out, I think it's 18 classrooms that included a science lab that it hadn't had before, a gym that it didn't have before, a teacher lounge and teacher preparation spaces that we didn't have before. And the students' response has really been phenomenal to be in classrooms that are sized appropriately for them, built out appropriately for them, that have sort of the spaces that they need. And so I would say that was a big deal. At Friendship Southeast, it was a repurposed elementary school that we were using as elementary and middle. And so the classroom space that we were able to build out also added for students small maker space, a gym, which they did not have an appropriate gym before, as well as science labs, a tech lab, a Verizon innovation lab. And so the response from students has It's been overwhelmingly positive. The same for families and the same for that community. That community is in Ward 8. I can tell you when we first moved in, they were like, I mean, there have been a lot of broken promises in some of the communities that we're in. And so I think it made people proud to see the fact that we put a really state-of-the-art classroom building there. That is, I think it's very attractive from the outside, but it's the inside spaces that I think are making a difference to our students and our staff.
Thank you for that, and I appreciate you laying that out. My last question is actually regarding feedback that you all have received on the use of off-street parking at 6200 Kansas Avenue Northeast. How have you responded to the concerns?
So we built out parking across the street where sort of the elementary middle is, and there's parking on both there are 2 lots on 6200, and there's parking available on both sides. I have been there for the start of school and et cetera. And while, like with most schools, in drop off, there is sort of a little bit more congestion, there is no more congestion from the parking that's sort of outside of it. But we have heard from the community. And so we provide staff parking and some parent parking for visits to that location.
Thank you. Very helpful. Chair Wright, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Treasurer Stanley, I think you had a follow-up.
Thank you, Chair Wright. Ms. Brantley, I just had one other question. Since there has been testimony on it, I wanted to ask about the grant. Although I appreciate the clarity that you all haven't received a distribution of funds to date, I'm curious how you're treating the grant in your budget. So how does it appear in your budget? How are you treating it in your budget?
Sure, absolutely. So Friendship's budget, like all charters, has the normal categories. And so in federal grants, what you will see is that we will recognize the grant award and then any amounts that we might get toward it. And then once we start seeing sort of a grant award, you'll see the expenses that are related to it. But right now, because we haven't received any of the grant funding, you don't see any of the cash sort of moving in our budget.
Okay, so you recognize it in the budget when you actually get awarded the funds or when you match it to an expense?
We recognize it when we get the award with an equivalent amount that would go out as expense. Given though the timing of this particular one, it's all going to push forward, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it.
When you say push forward, what does that mean?
Meaning that because they haven't awarded any and we haven't, and we're not outlaying funds, then we will have to repurpose or move to the next budget season.
Move recognition of it to the next budget.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. So let me ask you another question. So do you recognize the award anywhere? For example, is it in your audited financials?
It is.
And I know you may not know that right off this. I'm just curious, where do you recognize the award?
When we get an award, we're on an accrual basis. We recognize the awards.
In your financials.
In our financials. Exactly. That's exactly right.
Okay. So then for this particular award, you would recognize it in the financials, perhaps as a footnote, although it wouldn't actually flow into your P&L. I get that part.
Yes.
But somewhere you have to recognize the award.
Correct. We recognize awards when they are received. Correct.
Upon receipt. Got it. Okay. And then your point is, though, in terms of the budget, it wouldn't actually flow to a document that would be presented to PCSB until the money comes in your coffers.
Correct.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yes. And so what you'll see, I mean, we estimate federal grants in our budget for what we expect to receive. And so you will see that because we submit budgets to the PCSB. What you will also see is that our quarterly budgets will shift based on whether or not the award is actually being recognized during that period.
Okay. So when you say you recognize it in the budget to PCSB, when it's awarded or when
Correct.
Okay, so then that's a little different than I thought. So since you now have the award, is the grant recognized in a budget that we have at PCSB? You see where I'm going with the question?
Sure. Catherine, can you answer that?
Yes, so again, I'm sorry, good afternoon, everyone. So we do recognize the revenue, and we also put a specific amount, the same corresponding amount for expenses, so that if the funds are ever used, at that point in time, you'll see a change. But because the funds are not going to be used because we don't have an approved budget as we speak, when we do recognize the expenses for the next following year, you'll see the expenses going concurrently with the revenue. But we want to ensure that it's a matching one, and that we're not using the revenue for anything for any friendship operating expenses.
Got it. So I get the part about the expenses, and let me just make sure I heard what you just said. So what you just said is the current award, the grant award is in your budget right now.
Yes.
Okay. All right. For whatever that amount, I'm not asking you to disclose the amount. Whatever the amount is, it's in the budget now. And what you will then do is, as you draw down on it, you will pair the funds with expenses.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. I got it. Thank you.
Okay, so as we get ready to close this out, I do want to just clarify a couple of things. So while this request in front of us is mainly administrative, right, correcting or noting some changes, it does include a bit of a change in use or expansion of the not expansion, but a change of use of one of your current locations. But it is not related to your CSP grant and any plans that are contemplated therein.
That's correct.
Okay. And I want to note, Friendship has been awarded, but has not received nor spent any of the money in the grant.
Correct.
Okay. And Friendship understands PCSB's expansion or new campus policy, in that any additional request for high school or seats or anything like that would have to come before this board, and you understand that policy and expectations there.
Absolutely. Yes.
All right. I want to make sure that those points were noted. All right. Anything else that you all want to share with us, or even to clear up for any feedback you've received? John, I know you probably receive a lot as the community person. Anything you'd like to clarify?
I don't have anything additional to clarify, Chair Wright.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I certainly will add that I thank you for the robust discussion and the questions, just because we do want the community to be clear. Like, we want people to be aware that we want to serve the current students that we have better. But we are 100% aware and in agreement that should we come forward with a new plan or a new campus, that will come before this board. So just wanted to state that for the record.
Right. Okay. And you're also planning, you're planning, you're figuring out what's next in terms of your impact.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So this was up for public hearing. We are not voting tonight. You all will come back in front of us probably in November for I don't know, maybe November. I see Hannah shaking. So November for the actual vote. If there are any questions or anything in between there, anyone listening, feel free to send those comments to us. We will send them to Friendship to get answered as well. So thank you, Friendship team, for your time. Mr. Hentz, it's always good to see you. I'm a little biased when I see you, so thank you for being here. Have a good night, Friendship folks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right. Next up, we have a request from Basis DC PCSB. I'll ask Christy Dennis, Manager, Sector Planning and Compliance, to introduce the request. I would please like to note that Board Member Leah Cruci is recused from this matter and has left the meeting. It will be there she goes. She has left the meeting for this portion. While Christy is getting set up, I'd also like to invite representatives from the school to provide remarks. Calvary Cooper, Rachel McCarthy, Timothy Blackenstaff, Katie Porter, if you can just raise your hands and make it a little easier for us to find you. Good evening, Christy.
Good evening, Chair Wright. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Christy Dennis, and I am a manager in the School Performance Department. Tonight, the board will hear from Basis DC Public Charter School regarding its competency-based units amendment proposal. The school proposes offering competency-based units in place of Carnegie units for students in grades 6 through 8 who demonstrate mastery of Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and geometry content. Representatives from the school are here to answer the board's questions.
Thank you. Welcome, BASIS team. Hi, Ms. Cooper. Good to see you.
Hi.
If you want to just take a minute and introduce who's with you and then share anything you'd like to on your proposal.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Chair Wright, Executive Director, Dr. Walker Michelle Davis, and members of the board. I am Calvary Cooper, the head of school at BASIS DC, and I am joined here tonight by Rachel McCarthy, who's sitting right beside me, Director of Academic Programs, Katie Porter, Regional Director of Compliance, and Timothy Blickenstaff, Vice President of Curriculum. We're here tonight because we are seeking approval to amend the graduation requirements as outlined in our charter agreement. Specifically, we are requesting approval to offer competency-based credit in math. Our students move through an accelerated math sequence, earning high school credits in both algebra and geometry 1 and 2 for a total of 3 credits before they enter 9th grade. All BASIS students ultimately complete AP Calculus AB as a part of our graduation requirements. From time to time, we have students who show exceptional readiness and already demonstrate mastery of high school math content without needing to sit through a full course. This amendment will allow those students to earn credit by demonstrating mastery with a score of 80% or higher on an exam, while maintaining the rigor of our curriculum. Thank you for your time and consideration, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you all have.
Great. Thank you, BASIS team. I will go ahead and kick us off. So you talked a little bit about needing this for students who are exceptionally excelling. I love that, first off. But when you talk about how will that look in your school? Like, how does that actually play out? And then how are your students currently progressing through your math curriculum?
Yes, of course. So I will let Ms. McCarthy take the second half to speak about our math curriculum.
Yeah, so in terms of our students and how they currently progress through our math curriculum right now, in 5th grade, our students are taking accelerated math. In 6th grade, they're taking pre-algebra, and they start earning that high school credit in 7th grade when they take algebra and geometry 1, and then in 8th grade, algebra and geometry 2. In 9th grade, we kind of start to split off into 2 paths where students are given the opportunity to take honors pre-calculus or AP pre-calculus. And then from there, if they took honors pre-calculus, then they take AP pre-calculus. Our AP pre-calc kids take AP Calculus AB. And then in 11th grade, they have the option to take Calc AB, Calc BC, or stats based on the progress that they've made. In terms of what that would look like with kids like accelerating in the context of what we're asking for, it would look like 6th graders taking 8th grade classes. So we would have a 6th grader sitting in an 8th grade course.
Physically sitting and wow, okay.
Yes, and so our schedule would be designed to allow that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, just listening to all the math courses already gave me a little bit of trauma, so you know.
I know, it's a lot to explain.
Okay, and so why, not maybe the better question is, how will competency-based units better meet the students' needs and their interests? Like, why that versus?
Yeah, so I think, the last time I was here, which does not feel that long ago, we spoke a little bit about us making some changes to our charter to better suit the needs of our students. And as we continue to develop, we are being more intentional about being receptive and responsive to our family feedback. And so this has come at the not demand, but at the constant questioning of our students who are constantly scoring hundreds and earning hundreds straight A's in their math-based content areas. And so we do have those students who are doing exceptionally well and would like the opportunity to further demonstrate mastery to not have to sit through a full year. And so in that regard, those students will have the opportunity to do 1 or 2 things. They would have the opportunity to just take the exam, the credit-based, competency-based exam to demonstrate mastery, and or sit through a summer course, participate rather in a summer course where they can actually go through the sequence of the course and then demonstrate mastery on the exam.
Okay, thank you. Secretary Shakura Adamafania.
Thank you. Building on that question, so I'm sorry, good evening, BASIS team. Nice to see you all again. Building on the point that you just made, how will you determine who qualifies to even participate in the summer program, who qualifies to be able to take the test? What is it that the student would need to demonstrate to even get on the path for that?
Yeah. So our families, any family who is interested would of course need to speak to the leadership team, to let us know that they are in fact interested. We will look at this progression of the students' grades, not just how they're doing in math per se, but how they're doing in a class such as physics or chemistry, all of those courses which are heavily focused on math concepts as well. And if the grades are aligning with the desire that the student has and they're able to demonstrate mastery on the exam, then they would qualify.
Okay, thank you. And then how did you all get to determining that 80% mastery or 80% a score on the assessment would be sufficient enough to say that the student in fact has mastered the content? How did you all come up with that?
You want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. So when we get to the 80% threshold, we find, especially because we have a summer pre-algebra acceleration program, so we have a program that's kind of similar to obviously non-high school based credits for students to allow them. And so we've found that 80% is that threshold where they've covered the content that they need to, that they understand what they need to, with maybe a little bit of a gap that can be remediated in the classroom when they go over those foundational concepts again at the beginning of the year. And so 80% tends to be that threshold, which is where we decided to make that cutoff.
Okay, and so just so that I'm clear, the pathway that you all are proposing would be a student, there's a parent makes a request, you guys look at the kid's score or student's score in other classes, they're then told to take the summer course.
They can take the summer course or they can take the exam. You can do both. So if you have two options, one option being just sit the exam, the second option being take a moment to look over the content, go through a self-paced summer course, and then sit the exam.
Okay, and then let's say the student then achieves the 80%, and you just mentioned, I'm sorry, your name again, sitting right next to Ms. Cooper.
Oh yeah, I'm Rachel. I'm McCarthy.
Ms. McCarthy. So the student achieves the 80%. Is there, I mean, so essentially they would receive the credit or the credit, but you mentioned that 80%, at 80%, there is maybe a small need for remediation or something like that. Like they have it, but so what is then offered to the young person if they achieve the 80%? What is offered following that?
Right. So the idea is that they have covered enough content to earn the credit, obviously, in the way that it would show up on their transcript. And the 80% also is to match the fact that our courses spiral. So we want to make sure that, setting the threshold at just barely passing, we want to feel comfortable enough promoting the student into the next grade level where they're going to be able to then understand the content as they dive in. Obviously, our courses, because they spiral, start at the beginning of the year reviewing concepts from the previous year. But we have an additional set of student supports that we would put in place to support the child in terms of academic support, interventionists if it came necessary, to be able to support the student as they enter the curriculum.
Excellent. And then my last question would be, how are you going to make students and families aware of this opportunity and their eligibility? What does that process look like?
Yeah, of course. So at the beginning of the year, not only at the beginning of the year, but also towards the end of the year, we do rising nights for all of our students. So actually we have a rising ninth grade night coming up in November 17th. And so that is our 8th graders who are going to be entering their 9th grade year with us. And they learn all about the 9th grade curriculum, what that curriculum entails, what kind of extracurriculars, what kind of support. So all of those things. And then we do that for all of our grade levels. And then after that, at the beginning of the year, we'd also give out, hit that again with families when we do our whole school town halls, letting them know what options are available and how to take advantage of those opportunities. So it is a lot of community engagement when we are thinking about families.
Awesome. Thank you, Chair Wright. Those are all my questions.
Thank you, Secretary. Treasurer Stanley Beatty.
Thank you, Chair Wright. So I'll start by saying you actually asked my question, Chair Wright. My question was, how does this look? But I do want to follow up on that in terms of the answer that you gave. So you gave an example where you said essentially you could have a sixth grader that takes the online course, achieves the 80%, and then they basically are now in eighth grade math courses, I think was the example you gave.
Yes.
So in that example, though, the student is not in eighth grade. They're still in sixth grade. They're just taking eighth grade math.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And so then that acceleration of math continues until what point? Because at some point, they are, for example, in ninth grade taking 12th grade math, right? So it accelerates to what end?
Yeah, so I was gonna say this is what I eat, breathe, and sleep. So if a sixth grader were to start at Algebra and Geometry 2, they started in, because that's what we offer in eighth grade. So they start at Algebra and Geometry 2. That means in their seventh grade year, they would be taking AP Pre-Calculus. However, with the caveat of if they are not, comfortable with continuing to accelerate, they can go into Honors Pre-Calculus instead of AP Pre-Calculus if they are maybe not ready for an AP style course yet. So we still have differentiation within our math curriculum that allows for that. But assuming they go into AP Pre-Calculus, they would then take AP Calculus AB in eighth grade. In ninth grade, they would take their AP Calculus BC. And then in 11th grade, they would take AP Statistics. And then in 11th grade, they would take some post-AP math class in advance of their...
In 12th grade, it's okay. In 12th grade, they would finish with a math capstone.
Yes.
Okay. So it's not, so the acceleration doesn't have any student at any grade where they're not taking any math.
That is.
You've got them taking math courses all the way up to 12th grade, even with the accelerated program.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, that was my first question. And then the second question is, you made a comment that your curriculum spirals. What does that mean? I've never heard that term.
Yeah, so we want to make sure that our courses are connected, and so that they're not so like segmented from one another. We want to make sure that there is overlap, and so what they learn in the course beforehand prepares them exactly for what they need to know for the next course. And so in like Algebra and Geometry 1, towards the end of the year, they're learning some of those concepts that are going to lead them into some of the beginning concepts of Algebra and Geometry 2.
Got it. So it's progressive, essentially.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Spiral is a term that we use to describe that. Yeah.
I got it. I like new terms. I got it. Thank you. That's it for me, Chair Wright.
All right. Given that, I don't think we have any other questions. Thank you all for being here this evening and all the work that you do with your students. This was open for the public meeting. We will actually move it to the agenda for official vote next month.
Okay.
So we'll see you back then. Thank you all. Have a good evening. All right, now we are moving into, this concludes the public hearing portion of our agenda. I think Board Member Crucy should be joining us. Oh, there she is. You just keep popping up on me fast, Board Member Crucy. All right, I now move to approve the October 27, 2025 board meeting agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Secretary Adam Afeni, can you call roll, please?
Sure. Chair Wright.
Aye.
Treasurer Stanley Beatty.
Aye.
Board Member Crucy.
Aye.
And Vice Chair Sandman is an aye by proxy, and I'm an aye as well, Chair.
All right, thank you. So next on our agenda, we'll be voting on the enrollment ceiling increase request from Academy of Hope PCS. For that, I'll yield the floor back to Hannah Cosina. Welcome back, Hannah. And I'd also like to invite representatives from the school to provide any additional remarks should they choose. Tiffany Gabbott, Leicester Johnson, Brianna Cobbins, Joy Bentley Phillips, and Michael Durant. If you could also raise your hands, that will help us move and get you elevated quickly. Welcome, Hannah.
Okay. Good evening again. DCPCSB staff recommends the board approve Academy of Hope Adult Public Charter Schools request to increase its enrollment ceiling by 500 students for a maximum enrollment of 1,500 students. Following the public hearing on September 15th, 2025, the school submitted supplemental information revising its request to align with DCPCSB's definition of conservative growth. Academy of Hope Adult Public Charter School now proposes growing to serve 1,500 students over 4 years instead of 3. The school supplement also addressed concerns board members raised during the public hearing regarding staffing and contingency planning. Representatives from the school are available if you have any outstanding questions.
All right, welcome Academy of Hope folks. Board members, you will all remember we had a pretty robust discussion with Academy of Hope when they were here. It looks like Joy is battling the son who also wants to come on screen as well. We have all been there. You are more than fine, Ms. Phillips. At least he's really cute, so there you go. But I don't know if board members have additional questions or if there's anything that the Academy of Hope team would like to offer before we move to a vote.
Sure. Just good evening, Chair Wright and members of the board. We'd just like to offer our heartfelt thank you for the care, transparency, and time you and staff have invested in reviewing our request and guiding us through this process. We're grateful for your partnership and for the thoughtful way you center quality for DC learners. I assure you that as we expand access, we will protect what matters most: the quality of learning experience and the outcomes of our adult learners achieve. Our learners are parents, caregivers, and essential workers, people who have chosen our school to help them achieve their goals. They deserve not only a seat, but a high-quality seat. We will continue to scale with care, responsibility, and with community voice at the center, and with operational discipline you expect from us. We're grateful to the PCSB staff, and we appreciate the board's emphasis on conservative, responsible growth. With your support tonight, we can open more high-quality seats that lead to credentials, careers, and stronger families across the district. On behalf of the board, team, and most importantly, district residents, thank you for considering this amendment.
Thank you. I think we have a couple questions, clarifying questions from our side. Treasurer Stanley Beatty and then Board Member Crucy.
Yep, Chair Wright. My first one is just it's exactly what you said. It's a point of clarification, and then I do have a question. So in the material that we have the proposal, and I raised this when we talked about this during deliberative session, under the economic viability section of the report, there's verbiage that essentially says that in a scenario that assumes enrollment above the current 1,000 student enrollment ceiling, that the school is still economically viable. I asked this, like I said, in deliberative session, or I wanted to confirm it for the record. Although we reference above the 1,000 student enrollment ceiling in the report, what staff has done is they've actually pegged economic viability to the new numbers that the school is proposing. I just want to confirm that and say that for the purposes of the record, because the language in the proposal is vague.
I'm happy to respond to that, Treasurer Stanley Beatty. You're understanding it right, and thanks for underscoring some of the confusion in the language. But essentially, we are highlighting that even if the school went beyond the approved 1,000 that they have right now, it would still remain economically viable. So it's not only an assertion that their current proposal is economically viable, but even an increase, which they've not been approved for, would still present a healthy financial picture. So if anything, it was a double stamp that this school has handled this planning well.
Okay, thank you for that, Will. And then I do have a question for the Academy of Hope team. And I can't remember if we talked about this during the deliberative session, but as things stand right now, I think everything that we've been provided says that there is no plans for additional facilities. Is that still the case? Question mark?
No. Well, there are plans for additional facilities. Yes.
Okay. I knew we talked about it, but so there are plans for additional facilities.
Yes, there are.
It's not necessary.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That was the distinction. And those potential plans are reflected in your budget. Question.
No, not in the budget on
They
the
are not.
No.
Okay.
No, we would have to put another, we've actually talked to staff about this. We'll put in another application. If this, either way, we'll put in another application. And then we'll have to reflect that, and then you'll make a decision on that.
Post the enrollment increase.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So fine.
It's a completely different, two different paths.
Understood. No, I got it. And I appreciate that. I had notes from the deliberative discussion about facilities. And so I'm somewhat reminding myself. There is contemplation. Obviously, it's not in front of us right now. Whatever you would do would need to come back, but that would be post the enrollment ceiling increase.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm straight now. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Board Member Crucy.
Thank you for this. I will be voting in support of this. My question is not related to this particular vote. It's related to our conversation last month. We had a great conversation about changing workforce dynamics and forecasting how workforce demand may change in hard to foresee ways. And so my request is to encourage you to come back to us and engage with us as you even evolve your forecasting methods. I'm very interested in how we collectively as a city think about this. I think we all lived through the computer science efforts of years past that we may approach differently next time around. And you're in such a unique opportunity to innovate here. The demand for your programs are self-evident, and that is why I'm voting in support of this enrollment ceiling increase. I'll offer that I was a little concerned, not about you, but about not hearing what sounded like a very robust set of interactions across agencies and organizations around the city to be thinking about this. The pace of change is so fast right now that our students need this, our city needs this, our economy needs us to be thinking differently about how we plan ahead for these kinds of workforce demands and changes. So it's a request to keep the conversation going and for us to continue learning from you.
Okay. So anything else from, I don't see anything from the members of the board. Anything else that the Academy of Hope team would like to add? All right, colleagues, I will now entertain a motion.
Chair Wright, I'll move to approve the charter amendment request of Academy of Hope Public Charter School and approve the DC PCSB board chair to sign the amendment on the board's behalf.
Second.
Thank you. Secretary Adamafania, can you please call roll?
Chair Wright.
Aye.
Treasurer Stanley Beatty.
Aye.
Board Member Crucy.
Aye.
Vice Chair Sandman voted aye by proxy, and I am an aye as well.
All right. Well, congratulations, Academy of Hope. We expect big things from you all. As Board Member Crucy said, there's great demand for your program, and we know you're working really hard for our adult learners in the city. So thank you for your commitment and thank you for your work. And thank you, little Joy Phillips, who was down there trying to come on TV. Let him on the TV. There you go. Let's all wave to him. We're waving to you. All right. Thank you, Academy of Hope.
Thank you.
You guys have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, the board will be voting to open a new policy for public comment. I'd like to invite, oh, Hannah, you didn't go anywhere. So if you want to stay right there, go ahead and introduce the policy that I hope we will call something different very soon. So thank you.
Okay. Last time you'll hear from me tonight. Hello again. Staff requests that you open for public comment the proposed mergers and acquisitions policy from after tonight's meeting through November 17th. DCPCSB will consider all public comments received during this period before the final vote. As population forecasts for school-age children decline and city conditions change, DCPCSB must create the policies for thoughtful charter sector planning. This new policy offers a set of pathways to support the sector's sustainability, efficiency, and quality. As proposed, the policy 1. Defines mergers and acquisitions. 2, sets guiding principles to drive staff evaluation of all sector planning related requests. And 3, establishes minimum eligibility criteria and a review process for 3 pathways: mergers, standard acquisitions, and emergency acquisitions. Anyone may submit a comment through our website, dcpcsb.org, to public.comment@dcpcsb.org, or by mail to 100 M Street Southeast, Suite 400. Anyone wishing to provide testimony before the board may do so during the public hearing on November 17th. The board is scheduled to vote on the policy at the December 8th board meeting.
Okay. So a couple, am I on mute? So a couple things that I would just like to note. One is the name change. I think part of where this really goes into our sector planning. So I know we are just opening up comments, but I do want the public to recognize that we are thinking about this particular portion, and highly encourage people to really read and engage in this policy and provide us really authentic feedback, because this is a policy that will have impact in our district for years to come. I also just want to note that this is something that has come at the direct request of charter leaders and sector partners as well. And so we are thinking about this in terms of formalizing requests as we think about how schools might combine or restructure to strengthen their program. So as we thought about this, we worked in collaboration with the leaders, establishing clear, predictable guidelines that promote transparency for school leaders, staff, families, and students. So we welcome all feedback. The period, as Hannah noted, opens, I guess, technically tonight. Well, once we make this motion, it opens tonight. And you can, as I shared earlier, you can give us comment via written testimony. You can call into our phone line to give testimony. You can email testimony as well. And so we look forward to receiving that. And we also look forward to engaging with the public, with each other in a public format as we talk about a policy as large as this that impacts our sector. So we will also be hosting a roundtable where you will hear from us as board members talking with one another and staff about this policy as well. So please, we do receive and read feedback, so we welcome it, and we're actually requesting this. All right. So with that, colleagues, I will now entertain a motion.
I move to open the mergers and acquisitions policy for public comment.
Second.
All right. Secretary Admafania, can you please call roll?
Sure. Chair Wright.
Aye.
Treasurer Stanley Beatty.
Aye.
Board Member Crucy.
Aye.
Vice Chair Sandman via proxy voted aye, and I am an aye as well, Chair.
All right, thank you. So the motion passes. Public comment is officially open. And again, we welcome it, and ask, you can also come and testify as well at our hearing next month as well, if you don't want to do it in writing or via phone. All right, for our next agenda item, I yield the floor to our treasurer, Carissa Stanley Beatty.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Wright. This is our standing financial oversight report that we do each monthly board meeting. It allows us to continue to demonstrate transparency to families, to LEAs, and to the sector. This is also an opportunity, and we welcome the board to engage with questions, discussions, or points of clarification that highlights the work of the Finance Committee and the finance team in an even deeper way. And so with that, I will turn it over to Will Henderson, our Chief Operating Officer, for this month's financial update.
Good evening again. Thanks, Treasurer Stanley Beatty, and good evening, members of our board. I am DCPCSB's Chief Operations Officer, and so I have a couple of updates for us tonight. And while I'm sharing those, maybe Jonah can pull up a slide deck. We'll have a brief information that I just want to offer for y'all's consideration. So on December 17th, 2025, the DCPCSB Finance Committee met to discuss the financial status of certain charter schools. We spoke about an update on the upcoming review and renewal cycle, which has been of utmost importance to us this season, and financial oversight framework refinements and upcoming DCPCSB board critical decisions. Of note, Capital Village PCS's July 2025 financial statements were in compliance with its Financial Corrective Action Plan, or their FCAP. The next milestone or evaluation of Capital Village's FCAP compliance will be connected to their validated enrollment, which will be forthcoming. Beyond that, DC PCSB has not made any changes to the financial monitoring list nor issued any citations of fiscal concern since our September board meeting. All right. While my slides are getting pulled up, a couple of things that I wanted to I'll share as opening. We've had.
I'm sorry, are you waiting for Jonah? Because I think you can share. Can you not share yourself, or you need Jonah has to?
Oh, I'm happy to share. I didn't.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just don't have access to the slide deck. I was looking in the agenda folder, but I don't see it in there.
Okay, great. Well, then give me a hot second and I will do that.
I apologize, Will.
It's all right. It's all right. Thanks for pausing me, Chair Wright. Let's see if I can get us going here. Share.
Great, we can see it.
Okay, great. So as Treasurer Stanley Beatty shared, part of what we do in this monthly financial oversight review is occasionally we offer opportunities for just general conversation or education about our oversight work. And so we haven't done that in the last few months because of the summer and various other things. Last winter, we did a couple of series conversations just to orient the board and the broader community about all of our processes. As we've gone through the summer and kicked off this year, though, we've had a number of amendments. We had a conversation about some of those amendments just tonight. And so I thought it would be an opportunity to share some of the less flashy oversight work that is always happening throughout our time. So you may recognize this slide. Months ago, I shared just what typical oversight looks like for the school finance team of the DC Public Charter School Board. We are constantly doing document review, and we spend a lot of time talking about reporting and our metrics. And certainly we work hard to and are focusing in particular this fall on strengthening all of our engagement work. But a big part of what we do also with things like these amendments is we do risk assessment. So in particular, when I thought it'd be good to take a quick moment and talk about what a charter is and what a charter amendment is. And Chair Wright, you shared a bit about this in your opening remarks and at Council's hearing last week. But the charter itself is the contract between us, PCSB, and a school's board. And I guess when I say us, I really mean the board here at PCSB and the board of the school itself. That charter governs operations, financials, and academic goals. A charter amendment is the request to amend that contract. Some examples that we hear the most about, and this is does not include all examples, but some that are common would be a new facility, an enrollment ceiling increase, a change in grade levels. And you can imagine anything else that changes that charter would need a charter amendment. As has been evidenced in recent meetings, schools frequently submit amendment applications to us, and our team at staff at PCSB are constantly reviewing those amendments and bringing them to you all. Not every charter amendment has financial implications, but these examples that I've listed here do have financial implications. And so the school finance team is responsible as a part of their typical oversight work to ascertain the financial impact on those amendments. So, for every amendment, the school finance team reviews an application and an accompanying 5-year budget. The team then will draft an economic viability assessment. You should recognize the language economic viability because it comes specifically from the School Reform Act, and this assessment includes an analysis of the impact of the request. We were talking about with Friendship earlier tonight, and they clarified that their request did not have a financial impact because they own the buildings that they were making their amendments to, and these addresses that they were in discussion tonight. So this economic viability assessment can always be found in the public hearing and vote proposals for each amendment. And so if a member of the public wanted to see that information and see that analysis, that would always be available to them. So certainly we spend a lot of time talking about the academic impacts of such as these changes we do. In my opinion, in the places that I've served in my past, certainly agree with that. I think that that's a huge part of what we do. We want to be focusing on the academic impacts. But sometimes amendments do have the potential to impact a school's financial condition. So even in otherwise small changes, we have an obligation, as laid out in the School Reform Act, to ensure that, to the best of our knowledge, a school is economically viable and is able to serve the students that enroll there, even in the modification of their charter. So lastly, I thought I would just take a moment. Just in the very few recent months, these are a handful of amendments that have come before this board for a public hearing and a board vote. And so in all of these conversations, staff has done economic viability assessments, and before it makes its way to this board to vote, we have ascertained that the amendment itself, the school will maintain and remain economically viable. So I welcome any questions that the board has to offer and gain any clarity here, but we want to take a moment to say, to share a bit about what financial oversight is occurring, even when it's not often spoken about.
Thank you for that, Will. I think it is very important to continue to educate the public on what we kind of take in every day in terms of understanding this work, and particularly having some insight into what you and your team do. So this is very helpful, particularly given that we have had these amendments. I actually want to go back to kind of more of the general, unless anyone has something on this before I ask Will to close. Okay, so thank you for educating us on that. You can stop sharing. I actually want to go back to the opening statements. Dr. Walker Davis and I both referred to it. In DC, October is a big time for schools because of the enrollment count. And one of the things that we're obviously seeing in our city overall is a decline in enrollment, the number of children in that kind of pre-K 3 through 12th grade space. But can you talk a little bit about how you all as a finance team and how we think about looking at LEAs, like considering their enrollment, and it's such a key driver for a school's budget. How do we assess the LEA's ability to implement its budget with fidelity, and like where do red flags come up for us? Like, is there a benchmark? I'm asking it as a question, knowing there's an answer, but is there a benchmark in which we ask people to revisit their budgets if they don't meet enrollment? What happens now? So there's this big talk, right, in the city, October 5th, or I think this year was October 6th because of the way the 5th fell, is this big day. What does that mean for your team? And then how do we work with schools and hold them accountable to be good stewards over public funds?
Thanks, Chair Wright. So without taking up all the time, I'll back up just a little bit.
I mean, you don't want to just take an hour and give us a whole lesson on it?
I'm happy to. So really the whole cycle starts at the beginning of the prior school year, where a school offers their projections for their future school year to us and to the DME. And so all of that, those enrollment projections are sent to us and the city to help determine, make projections for what what they predict the whole entire ecosystem of the city's students are going to be, right? Which impacts how the student or the mayor chooses to budget for the city for the upcoming year. During the summer, schools then submit to DC PCSB a budget that is approved by their board. In that budget, a school uses that enrollment projection to build their budget. Most of our schools, the vast majority of their revenue is coming from and through enrollment. And so at that time, we see the school's enrollment, and we already had access to it from early in the year. Of course, if a school has an outlandish number built into their budget, we would know right then and there what the variance is from a prior year or distinct from what the city has accepted as their enrollment projection. So that's happening during the summer and near the start of the school year. You referenced October 5th, that for all the school leader folks, that's a big day in our life. That's when what used to be called Count Day, where schools lock in their official unvalidated enrollment. And within a handful of days past the count day, or really the very next day, our team here at PCSB has access to those numbers. Now, that is unvalidated enrollment. And so sometimes there are little things that can move a student or two into or out of the budget, right? And so the validated budget is sometime early November, but you can't make big swings, big variance swings after that early October timeline. They're typically ironing out paperwork. It's small things that are barely moving the needle in that early October timeline. So schools that are shooting to meet their projected budget. So a school that misses that budget by over 10% is obliged to submit a new budget, because that 10% variance is shocking enough to a budget, whether you're a large LEA or a teeny tiny LEA. A 10% in revenue stream is large and influential, and certainly could impact a school's economic viability, especially if it's not mitigated with a change to their expense line. So those revised budgets are due back to PCSB. They require insight and exposure to the school's board. And those are due to us mid-November. And so we have another bite of the apple to take a look and ensure and understand that the school remains economically viable, even with a shift in their enrollment. Certainly, there are explainable reasons why enrollment can change, and schools, in my experience, will often work hard to mitigate that in a future year. And so a blip on the radar may mean nothing, and they make some expense line changes to be able to support a different enrollment than they projected. But that's kind of those are the cut points that are raising red flags for PCSB staff.
So one other kind of follow-up question. We hear a lot about, particularly when it comes to charter schools, this kind of concept of like post count day, we start this, trying to exit folks or whatever. But what we rarely talk about is those schools that actually take in students and like actually create space for them, even when they might not have or they might not be in the budget. How, if at all, does that impact budgets? How do schools ever get paid for those? Like, how does that move throughout the charter sector? This is more education than it is directly about this work, but I'm curious from a finance standpoint.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's a great question. And after the audited count enrollment is approved and validated in November, in the November timeline that I just mentioned, charter schools don't get additional resources if they take on a child. And so I know in my past and in my former other school leaders past, there were instances that would a school would choose to bring in a child. It can range from a sibling. It can range from, moving into town for a school that meets the needs of a child. I mean, there's any number of reasons why a school may take on students after the fact, but they are not compensated for those traditional dollars. One caveat to that is that if that child has a disability, there is some compensation offerings for the special education carve outs of those fundings. That's a small percentage of the broader perspective, but I want to make sure that that's not misrepresented. But in general, the large universal funding amount does not come to that child in that school year. They might get credit for it in the future, but that would be the following November's validated enrollment data.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to get at. So there, just to know how, money actually flows throughout the district and kind of the impact, particularly for charter schools. Okay. Any other questions for Will on this month's finance report? All right. Thank you, Ms. Henderson. Appreciate you being here. All right. So next on our, next we'll vote on our consent calendar. Before we go into questions, I do just want to make sure that the public understands that items that are on our consent calendar can be accessed on our website, so you can see where they are and how certain items get placed on that calendar. And before we vote, I do want to just note that this is our first time, although it'll be happening through consent calendar. You heard our executive director, Dr. Walker Davis, talk about it earlier. We do have our first two schools adopting Aspire or seeking to adopt our Aspire framework, and that is KIPP DC PCS, as well as Shining Stars PCS. And so we are excited about that happening. So with that, are there any, would any board member like to remove an item from the calendar for further discussion or state a recusal for the record? Okay, seeing none, colleagues, I will now entertain a motion on the consent calendar.
I move to approve all items on the consent calendar.
Is there a second?
A second.
All right. Secretary Admafania, can you call roll, please?
Yep. Chair Wright.
Aye.
Treasurer Stanley Beatty.
Aye.
Board Member Crucy.
Aye.
Vice Chair Sandman is an aye by proxy, and I'm an aye as well, Chair.
All right, motion passes. Thank you. Is there any new business? Okay, seeing none, I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn the October 27th, 2025 board meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Secretary Admafania, please call roll.
Chair Wright.
Aye.
Treasurer Stanley Beatty.
Aye.
Board Member Crucy.
Aye.
Vice Chair Sandman is an aye by proxy, and I'm an aye as well, Chair.
All right, thank you all. Meeting is adjourned. And just a reminder, I guess I should have reminded before the adjournment, reminder to the public that our policy has opened, and we would appreciate your feedback and we welcome the same. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Night.
Good night.